42 The Limes, Heather Green. Dear Vera, do not tear this up. Read it first and then decide. You will no doubt be surprised that I am writing to you after we both vowed never to communicate with each other again after the disastrous holiday together last year. However, a certain event has taken place which I feel duty-bound to inform you of. I have tussled with my conscience as to whether to keep my distance and keep mum, but I find I cannot lie, not even, as politicians seem to do, by emission. There is no nice way to impart the dreadful news I have to tell you. Bill Snapes is dead. You remember, of course, after dallying with us both, he set up with a girl half his age, and I think I told you they'd had a baby. Well, no sooner did she have that baby, but another one popped out, and the upshot is that he had a heart attack last week from which he hasn't recovered, and the funeral is on Friday. The village is buzzing with the rumour that he was taking Niagara, which just goes to show what happens if you try to burn the candle at both ends. Certainly, since it happened, the queue at the chemist's has gone down considerably, and his old golfing cronies are looking far less jaunty. I know that you were once fond of him, so in the circumstances, if you do want to pay your respects at the service, which is at 3 in the afternoon, you could stay overnight with me on the put-you-up in the living-room. I have already checked the buses and trains and found that there is no way you could get back afterwards unless you spend the night on the platform at Nottingham, where you'd have to change. Incidentally, since I'm writing anyway, I thought I'd just mention that I found your swimming costume the other week rolled up inside my old pack-a-mac, which I was about to donate to the village Minellium Bus Shelter Fund. I told you there would be a perfectly good explanation for its disappearance, which did not involve either me stealing it to wear myself or to make you less attractive on the beach next to me. I won't enclose it now, as it would be a waste of postage stamps if you're coming over next week, and anyway, as you'll see for yourself, the elastic has gone in the legs. When I think of all the trouble it caused... But far be it from me to point the finger of blame or to rake up ancient history, and anyway the red wine came out of my cream skirt on the third wash, so as far as I'm concerned, the hatchet is well and truly buried. Can you let me know of your intentions either way as soon as possible, so I can give young Tracy Snapes an idea of numbers? Best wishes, Irene Spencer.
Sheep-dipper's Shed, Shooter's Hill, Shale Shap, near Great Shagthorn, Darbs Wed. Dear Irene, I was covered in shame on receipt of your letter, because it's been on my mind to write to you for months, particularly after I found several photos of us on that very holiday. Remember that lovely Italian man who insisted on snapping us at the Fountain of Trevi? He caught what I like to think is the essential you, grimacing with your handbag raised as though you were about to strike me. I did have a laugh, and it put me in mind of so many similar occasions over the years we have known each other. As you see, I am at my son Howard's. I came here after a brief sojourn at Golden Pastures residential home. I'd had a nasty bout of flu, which led to slight deafness. But my daughter Karen decided my blank stare as she was screaming something about her latest love tangle was incipient Alzheimer's, and persuaded Howard to commit me to long-term care for the elderly. Lord save us from overdramatic daughters. I got my hearing back and left after a fortnight, though I must say it was very pleasant to have all one's meals prepared, even though the cocoa did taste funny. I am now waiting for sheltered accommodation to become vacant. I suppose that means waiting for one of the poor old dears to die. Talking of funerals, I never thought I would wish it on anybody, but life at Sheep-dipper's Shed, even with one's favourite child, is a little trying. The sheep's yoghurt has not been doing at all well since all that fuss about BSC affecting dairy products, and some days I'm at my wit's end as to how to use up 60 gallons. Perhaps I should take a leaf out of Cleopatra's book and bath in it. Might be preferable to tepid solar-heated water with the pungent aroma of night soil. The toilet facilities here have not improved, despite Howard and his partner Anthony having created their own personal cesspit. Poor Bill. A case of what goes around comes around, or what goes up must come down if he really was taking Niagara. Oh, my goodness, I've just realised Friday is the day after tomorrow. They've taken so long to forward your letter. The matron at Golden Pastures is a little disorganised. I once surprised her with a bottle of sherry poised over a mug at 9:30 in the morning. Of course I'll come. It's only proper. Besides, I'm curious for a glance at this Tracy. I'd love to stay, if only for the hot water. I'll taxi to yours from the station and change. Oh dear, what on earth will I wear? Howard went through my wardrobe when I arrived and chucked out everything in man-made fibres. That reminds me, by all means give that bathing costume to the bus shelter fund. Perhaps someone with large thighs will buy it. Howard is planning the biggest party the Derby Dales has known for New Year's Eve 99. He's asked me to help him with the catering. At last a use for the yoghurt. We'll jump on Howard's bike and pedal this the 4 miles to the post. Really, you can take this eco stuff too far. Howard and Anthony do live up a 1 in 4 hill. Look forward to seeing you, if I survive it. All the best, Vera.
Saturday. Dear Howard, it is with great regret that I write to tell you that your mother has had an accident while staying here with me, but is not seriously ill. I have not yet ascertained the exact details of the full circumstances of her fall, as her dentures broke during the incident and her lips have swollen up like balloons, so she's making even less sense than normal. Suffice it to say that, as usual, the combination of strong drink and a member of the opposite sex had a disastrous effect on her. And not only on her. The gentleman in question fortunately escaped with a black eye and a broken toe, but Tracy Snapes' pelargoniums will never be the same again. And all of this during the baked meats of Tracy's husband's funeral. I was so embarrassed I didn't know where to put myself. But then again, what did I expect? Your mother has never given me anything but trouble. The hospital released her because they didn't have a bed, so now neither have I, and am forced to make use of my put-you-up in the living room, which with my back is like sleeping on a time bomb. Is there any way you can arrange to take her back to Sheepdipper's shed to finish her convalescence with you? Quite frankly, I'm exhausted, and she's only been here a day and a half. Unfortunately, there has been a misunderstanding with the cable company, and I'm currently without a phone, so please write back immediately and let me know what you intend to do, and whatever it is, make it quick. Hope you're well, by the way, and kind regards to Anthony. With all good wishes, Irene.
The Limes, Saturday. Dear Howard, I don't know what Irene has told you, and I don't want to call her a liar, but it definitely isn't true. There was a small incident, I'll admit, but nothing like on the scale she has been suggesting, and certainly not for the reasons. The funeral was a pleasant enough affair. Can't say I took much to Tracy Snapes. She's gone past her bloom very quickly. She's put on so much weight, and with her bottle blonde hair she reminded me of a chat show hostess. She'd admitted to follow Bill's last instructions, no doubt getting even when he can't answer back, and the wake was an alcohol-free zone. One of Bill's golfing compadres, Barry Robotham, and I were chatting in the conservatory. Barry's a smoker, though only cigars. Needless to say, Tracy didn't have the heating on, and Barry, a charming man, was kind enough to offer me a drop of warming whisky in my tea. We soon got tripping down memory lane about Bill. Barry was a hoot, showing me some of his tricks with a golf club. Unfortunately, Tracy had left some pelargoniums. Well, that's what she called them. They looked like common or garden geraniums to me, rather too close to the edge of a shelf, and 3 or 4 did get broken. Barry is also a ballroom dancing champ. He's got international trophies. In no time he was demonstrating a couple of tricky steps in the Pazo Dolé, which has always been one of my favourites. Some people might say, indeed they did, and Irene was one of them, that dancing at a funeral shows disrespect. I had to remind her of the many rituals we had seen on our travels, where those in mourning were wearing considerably less than a lounge suit and a heliotrope 2-piece. However, the tile floor in the conservatory was unusually slippery, possibly a film of ice due to the freezing temperature, and executing a flamboyant bull charge, I skidded, stepped on Barry's toe, threw out an arm to save myself, and punched him in the eye. Easily done, as I'm sure you'll agree. We both fell to the ground. Irene said afterwards we crashed and rolled around on top of one another, but that's a wild exaggeration. I have tried to explain what really happened, but my dentures have sustained irreparable damage, which makes speaking difficult, and Irene swears she can't read my writing. Staying with her under the circumstances is very trying, and I'd be grateful if you could come and get me as soon as possible. It is awkward to manage the train in plaster. Irene has just come in and brusquely informed me that it will take 6 weeks to replace my teeth on the NHS, so I must stop now and attempt to stick them together with some blue tack. Oh, for a blue Peter for the elderly. Your loving Mumsy. Kiss, kiss. P.S. Careful with that Niagara. Barry tells me it's easy to overdo it. Irene implied that's what we were testing on the conservatory floor.
Sheepdipper's Shed, Monday. Dear Irene, how lovely to hear from you after all this time, albeit in such painful circumstances. Mumsy's letter arrived by the second post, adding to the confusion. I think it's better to correspond directly with you, though, given the Alzheimer's situation. Poor Mumsy, she does have a way of courting disaster. Which limbs did she break exactly? We approached the hospital in Great Shagthorn about an ambulance, but the triage nurse, although he's a pet, said with all her problems she just didn't qualify as salvageable. His advice was a quick pillow over the face, but I'm sure he was only joking. Anthony is talking to our cheese man about borrowing his delivery van. We can lie her full length in that, which is more than we can in the MG Midget. All being well, we'll be with you the day after tomorrow. Fondest regards, and a big kiss for Mumsy, not on her swollen lips. Howard. P.S. We long for something as adult as cable. Sadly, it hasn't reached the dull old Derby Dales.
Wednesday night. Dear Howard, Wednesday has come and gone with no sight nor sound of you. Did you mean you'd be arriving the day after tomorrow from you writing your note, or the day after tomorrow of me receiving it? Quite frankly, I am being run ragged here with demands for this and demands for that, and what with your mother's teeth going west and everything having to be pureed, and my blender giving up the ghost and having to do it all by hand through a sieve, and then her having an accident on the bed sheets with the beetroot borscht, I really don't think I could be held responsible if something dreadful happened. My blood pressure has rocketed, and the way I am feeling at the moment, one or other of us may be in great danger of dying through the living-room ceiling onto my head, as you'll notice from the runny ink. She'd fallen asleep in the bath with the tap running and her foot jammed in the overflow. Naturally, she survived. If you haven't arrived tomorrow to take her away, I'm afraid I will have to send her on to you in a minicab, COD. Yours, Irene. Sunday, 20th October. Dear Vera, I hope your journey back to Sheepdippers went all right in the van last month, and that you survived the smell of the gorgonzola. And I hope that your leg is feeling better, and that the bostic on your dentures dried eventually without sticking your gums together as feared. As you will see from the contents of this parcel, you left a couple of undergarments behind, laundered and enclosed. I'm also enking some homemade fudge that you should be able to manage to suck, even if you still can't chew. I bought it from Mrs. Appleyard, who is renowned for her confectionery, at the home fair stall of the Minellium bus shelter Bring and Buy yesterday. A couple of people from the funeral were there, Ida Loseby and Mona Postlethwaite. I don't know if you remember them, but they remember you. They asked after you and told me to send you their best. It's hard to find the words, but I'm hoping that in time the dust may settle on this recent visit of yours, and that we can put behind us our hasty words. I bumped into Barry Robotham last week in the supermarket, and he was quick to take all the blame for the incident at the funeral. Thinking about it since, and you know what I'm like for dwelling on things until I've got them thoroughly sorted through, I've realised it was inevitable that we would get tense with each other at Bill's funeral after all the trouble he caused between us so long ago. It was 2 years before we managed to speak again after I found you in bed together, if you remember. And you may not know this, for you certainly didn't hear it from me. He had asked me only the day before if I'd considered taking the marital plunge. I really think that, all things being equal, if we could get over that, we can get over this. In pensive mood, I got out all your old letters today, and some rough copies of mine. I always like to neaten up mistakes afterwards, and usually make a fair copy of my missives. And I realise that the only time we have trouble between us is when we are actually together in the flesh. I was reminded how much I miss your cheery letters when we're at loggerheads and not speaking. Could we stick to the written word, do you think, and resist the temptation to meet? I don't know what it is about you, but I just seem to find you more palatable in print. Can bygones be bygone? Vera, it's hard to say it, but I'm sorry for my part if I caused offence during your stay. I was tetchy and under some strain. There. Now to the postbox with this before I change my mind. Time will tell if you feel the same. With fond regards and hopeful thoughts, your erstwhile friend, Irene.
The Homely Faggot, Western Esplanade, Vicar upon St Agnes, Friday. Dear Irene, really I've never known anyone like you for meeting trouble halfway, except perhaps Ethel Roscoe. As you can see, I'm staying with her to recuperate. I'd had all I could take of sheep dippers. My son Howard would insist on plunging my leg in sheep's urine, some ethnic health practice Anthony picked up. Thank goodness they didn't extend it to the dentures. Anyway, you will be pleased to know I am much better. In fact, as Karen said when I saw her last week and expressed surprise at her tattoo, apparently she's had it 2 years, Mother's back to normal. Speaking of memory loss, of course I remember Ida and Mona. Ida's the one whose husband was a transvestite, and Mona's the one you said looked like a Teletubby. I don't recall what these words were. You insisted you couldn't understand a thing I said, hasty or otherwise. Certainly you raised your voice more than was strictly necessary, but I put that down to your distress over Bill. I am more sensitive than you realise. I know perfectly well you've been carrying a candle for that two-timing creep for years, and in my opinion it's a good thing he's dead, especially living so close to you. Now you can move on with your life, Irene, instead of hoping he will ever come back. You've missed a lot of chances. There was that nice Italian policeman on our trip, and the mechanic who mended the dormobile. Ethel's just come back in with the fish and news that there's sheltered accommodation going near the beach. I shall pop down tomorrow and investigate. All for now, and rest assured your secrets are safe with me. And Ethel Roscoe. Love as always, thee. Saturday. Dear Irene, just had to send you a card with the good news. I got the accommodation. It's not exactly sheltered, unless you count the cliff, but it is near the beach. In fact, it's on it. The last incumbent, poor soul, went out for a paddle and never came back. It's an ill wind. I am now the proud tenant of a caravan. It's in a large park with all mod cons and facilities. Bet you can't wait to visit. V. P.S. Right care of Ethel Roscoe.
Tuesday, dear Vera. Is there anyone in your acquaintance who is as perfect as you? In the first few lines of your letter you managed to insult me, your only begotten son Howard, and his partner, and poor old Ethel Roscoe. Strange, since the one thing that we have in common is that we have all recently extended the hand of friendship to you and put you up, leaving aside putting up with you. I don't know where to start with your wild and inaccurate observations. I have not been carrying a candle for Bill, or a torch for that matter, which I believe is the usual nomenclature. As far as I'm concerned, it was over before it had begun, practically. It is true that I was foolish enough to feel warmly towards him all those years ago when he first became my gentleman friend, but once you and he started to see each other behind my back, it was over and out as far as I was concerned. Do I need to remind you of the country hotel weekend break for 3, where I discovered the two of you wrapped around each other and canoodling in the king-size 4-poster? As Marjorie Proops once wrote to a woman unfortunate enough to have been in my position, one expects such faithlessness from men, but from a woman friend, never. Believe you me, the reason I was tense at his funeral was because it reminded me of your betrayal, not his. As for me now being able to move on in life and missing lots of chances, may I remind you that the only reason that nice Italian policeman, incidentally they are called carabinieri in their language, so named because of their rifles, you'd know that if you'd paid more attention to the culture of the countries we passed through, instead of singing Viva España and the chicken song at every bar and disco you could find that served baked beans on toast. Where was I? Oh, yes. The only reason he became interested in me was because I had to flutter my lashes at him to stop you being shot. You had had far too much to drink, and you were driving at twice the speed limit down the autostrada with a paper bag over your head because you said, or screamed, as I remember, you couldn't stand the sight of me any more. Likewise, the mechanic had to be mollified because we hadn't enough money to pay him for the repairs. If you call that, or similar, moving on in life, I don't wonder you are now living in a caravan park. And, speaking of which, I don't know why you want me to correspond with your care of Ethel. If you think for one moment that I would visit you if you gave me your address, then you obviously didn't understand a single word of my letter. Last, and by no means least, I don't know where you get the idea that Ida's husband is a transvestite. He wears bells on his trousers and a funny hat because he is a Morris dancer, and that is all. Perhaps you have been hanging around sheep-dippers for too long. I notice you don't thank me for laundering your smalls, or for the fudge, but perhaps you are sent such gifts every day of the week and therefore don't think it worthy of comment. I was very sorry to read of the fate of the previous incumbent of your caravan. As you say, that poor woman's tragedy is your gain, but then that seems to be how life goes for you, doesn't it? I shall think of you when you are moving into your new home, and hope that all goes well. Happy paddling. Kind regards, Irene. Tuesday. Dear Ethel, I hope you don't mind being a post-restaurant, but Vera asked me to write to her care of you. Would you mind very much giving her the Enk missive? I hope you have been having jolly times together. She is great fun, of course, and so brave considering what she has to put up with. I don't know whether she has told you since she is the last one to ask for sympathy, but her only son is gay, and her daughter is a single mother, so it's hardly surprising she sometimes needs the solace of another woman's husband or lover. It's so sad to think that her memory is going. She told me in her last letter that she hadn't known her daughter was tattooed, but Karen has had mum on one hand and hate on the other for ages since. I know I can rely on your discretion not to spread any of this around, now that she is trying to move on in life and make her new home in your town. Hope you are keeping well. Kindest regards, Irene Spencer.
Lodge 202, Farshaw's Trailer Park, Vicar upon St Agnes, Thursday. Irene. It has come to my ears that you have been spreading malicious gossip about me. Ethel Roscoe popped down to the park this afternoon to tell me herself. Apparently my children are odd as the result of an abusive childhood. My grandchild is illegitimate, and my husband died in mysterious circumstances after learning I was a serial adulterer. Speaking of which, you are someone to complain of wild and inaccurate observations. My so-called affair with Bill Snapes is a total ligament of your imagination. As I think I told you at the time, our being in bed together was a mistake from start to finish. There I was, as I thought, on a weekend break you had booked for you, me and Bill as 3 swinging singles, and I find myself in the honeymoon suite with a man I've barely been introduced to. Though, come to think of it, I could say the same for the first night I spent with my husband Gerald. It was all your fault for booking the blithering honeymoon suite to begin with. It had more doors than a French farce. What with separate bathrooms, walk-in wardrobes and dimness of lighting, it's a wonder Bill and I found our way to the bed at all. As it was a king's size, we were peacefully slumbering at either side, without even knowing the other was there. I don't know which of the 3 of us was more surprised when we woke up and found you wedged between us. I can recall to this day your fury. You were white-faced even through your makeup. You tried to pass it off as a mistake the hotel had made. But who goes to bed in false eyelashes and bright pink lipstick except in an advert? It was quite clear you had intended all along to end up in the bridal suite with Bill, and only the lateness of your train meant I got there before you. Fortunately, 3 in a bed is all de rigueur in a trailer park. If anything, your outrageous fabrications have raised my profile. I saw several people in the communal facilities pointing and staring with awe on their faces. On reflection, that could have been owing to the state of my undies. The ones you returned are a violent shade of puce. Did you wash them with the beetroot borscht sheets? The fudge, by the way, finally put paid to my dentures. On contact with it, the bostic melted. But, as I was saying, I don't want this outrageous slander all over St. Agnes. I dread to think what could have happened if that letter had got into the wrong hands. I'm at a loss to understand your motives. All I have ever tried to be is a friend to you. As such, I have discussed your perfidy with our site security guard. Ethel got it wrong. This accommodation is not sheltered, it is protected. And he says, for a couple of £100 or so, he will pay you a visit. Yours, Vera. P.S. His name is Damon, but not for nothing is he known as Demon. The last person who caused bother to a resident is still in traction. Dear Howard, sorry to be a bother, but could you return that £250 I lent you to install the jacuzzi? I wouldn't ask you unless it was a matter of urgent family honour. Mother.